Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Bethany, and today's recipe, I'm gonna be showing you how to make my favorite honey cornbread. It's just the right balance of savory and sweet. It's also a very moist cornbread. I know there's lots of different cornbreads out there, but this is just my favorite way to make it. It pairs perfectly with chili, soups, or your favorite winter comfort meals. So let's get right into it. All right, so the first thing that we want to do in our recipe is make our homemade buttermilk, because who needs to buy buttermilk and use it for one recipe and then let it go to waste in the fridge? Because I don't ever cook with buttermilk other than this recipe. And you can easily make it at home with milk and an acid. So that's what we're gonna do. First, I heated up the milk because we've actually found in making lots of buttermilk ourselves that cold milk doesn't really curdle very well. So you actually have to heat it up a little bit. Yes, we actually want the milk to curdle. And so we have 1 cup of whole milk. I'm gonna add that back to my measuring cup, just so you can see it. And we heated this up just for like a minute on the stovetop, and that's just because we actually don't have a microwave. But you could heat the milk up for like 20 to 30 seconds. You just want it between like 75 to 80 degrees. We don't want it too hot. Then, in order to make buttermilk, we have to add an acid to the milk. So we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. You can use regular vinegar or lemon juice. And this is going to, like I said, curdle the milk and kind of coagulate it a little bit. And it's also gonna change the pH level in it. So this is how we're gonna make our own buttermilk. And the reason that I like to use buttermilk in this cornbread is because it enhances all the flavors in it, but also makes it really nice and moist. I'm just gonna leave it. You could stir it. I'll just let it do its thing, and we'll let it sit for 10 minutes. All right, so while our milk is doing its thing and turning into buttermilk, we can get going with our dry ingredients. And I just wanted to talk about the cornmeal that I like to use. This is by Bob's Red Mill, and it's a medium grind cornmeal. So it gives a really authentic corn texture to the cornmeal, which I, again, think is a very authentic cornbread type of texture. So we're gonna use 1 cup of this. And then for our other flour, because we're not gonna use the whole thing with cornmeal, we're gonna use all-purpose flour, or you can actually use a whole wheat white pastry flour if you wanna make it a little healthier, but you would never know using the whole white pastry flour. Oh, my cup's right here. And we're gonna do 1 1/4 cup. All right, then we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of baking powder to help this rise. And then 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Then we're gonna do 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Got my whisk, and we'll just whisk that together. Okay, so our milk has been sitting and doing its thing with the vinegar. It's definitely got some nice clumps in there. And so that's good enough for me. Now we'll get moving on to our wet ingredients. So we have 4 tablespoons of melted butter. We'll do 2 eggs. Then we have our homemade buttermilk. Look at all that clumpiness, delicious. And I didn't mention that if you are dairy-free, I mentioned this because I actually have some relatives that are dairy-free, and I've made this in a dairy-free version. You can use almond milk instead of regular milk, and you can use coconut oil instead of butter. Okay, so next we have our honey. It's a little cold. It's gonna take years for it to come out. So we're gonna do 2/3 cup of honey. I like my cornbread a little sweeter. I know that some recipes, like a real Southern cornbread, wouldn't be that sweet, but I like mine not sickly sweet, but it has like a nice, perfect balance of sweetness. So 2/3 cup of honey. You could also use maple syrup too. Okay, so we're going to just stir this up. My honey is very cold because we're in the dead of winter right now, so this might take a minute. Good enough. Now we're gonna combine the wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. And we'll just gently fold all this together. We don't want to overmix it. About 2 winters ago, I just remember I was on like a cornbread kick, and I just made so many versions of cornbread. And I just realized that there were so many different ways to make it. I actually had a viewer, Scott in Texas, I believe that's the handle. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but he sent me his spicy cornbread recipe because I just shared my chili recipe, and he wanted to share his cornbread recipe with me. So I will be making that, Scott. Today I'm making mine, but I do have it on my itinerary to make that one. Always appreciate when you guys send me your recipes. All right, so my baking dish, I'm gonna be using an oval shape, and this is an 11 by 8 inch pan. So you can use anywhere from 10 to 12 inch in baking dishes. And then we're gonna grease this. I have a little bit of leftover butter in here. Nothing goes to waste in my kitchen, so I'm gonna just use a napkin to take that out. I always do this and use some of that. It's probably not gonna be enough, but I'm at least just gonna use that leftover butter. Rub it all over. You definitely don't want the cornbread to stick. I'm also just gonna use a little bit of avocado oil. You can just rub it with butter too, whatever you want. Okay, now we can add our batter to the dish. And we'll just spread this evenly over the top. Now we're gonna bake this in our oven. We have it preheated to 375. We're going to bake this uncovered for 30 to 35 minutes. At the 30-minute mark, just because every oven is different, you're just gonna wanna check the center of the cornbread with a toothpick. Make sure everything comes out clean. If not, then you'll wanna shoot more towards the 35-minute mark. So we'll bake this and then it'll be done. All right, so the cornbread's done. Drew is here to taste. He's back. Some people were asking, where's the taste tester?
I'm back to try the cornbread.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I probably could have greased the dish a little bit more. So don't be afraid to grease a little bit more, but our cornbread was finished at the 33-minute mark. So that was for my oven and could be different for yours, but again, like I said, it's like a 30 to 35-minute baking time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is it's not overly sweet.
Mm-hmm.
You could add honey if you want, but everything is perfectly balanced there. Mm-hmm. I know I always say that. Just perfectly balanced. You get that you can taste a little bit of the bite of the corn, mm-hmm. which I actually really love.
Yeah, so that's why I really like using that milled ground corn, cornmeal, because it really does add that just bite of corn, and it feels very authentic to cornbread.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's delicious. For me, this is everything that I could want in a cornbread. It's got that moist bite. It's kind of like a little cakey, and then the savoriness of the corn, sweetness from the honey. But there are some recipes with cornbread that it just requires a little bit of sweetness and you can't really taste it in the cornbread. I like to taste it, but not too much. It's not overly sweet. And again, that bite of corn, it just tastes like a delicious cornbread. What more could you ask for? So we love it, especially with butter slathered on top and some more honey. And yeah, perfect pair with chili. We made chili in our last video. quite controversial. Didn't know that chili was so controversial with beans.
We ruffled a few feathers there.
We
sure.
did. I'm sorry to all my Texan viewers, but
A lot of them were really gracious, though.
they were. I will say there was so many of you that were incredibly gracious. We're just northern Yankees and we make chili a bit different. But that's okay. In the same way that you're gonna make cornbread a little bit differently than this. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just your way of making it and my way of making it. So, yeah. Well, you guys can pair this with our chili or your chili, whichever one you want, or a soup or your favorite winter meal. We brought this to, my mom made pot roast the one time and I had made cornbread. So we brought that to the dinner and it went great.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you can really pair it with any of your favorite winter meals. So I think that's it for today.
Yeah.
And it was good to have you back.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Drew's always behind the camera, but it's always nice to have him tasting. And yeah, so if you guys try this, we'll love to know what you think. And as always, we'll catch you in the next recipe and I will always see you in the comments.